welcome back to Director's Cut. And oh my gosh, we have a topic for you that is going to hopefully evoke lots of thoughts, lots of stories, and have you join us in this conversation. So make sure that you do that. Comment, leave us questions, leave your story. We want to hear it. Our topic today is motherhood. Whew, there's a lot. We've already been talking behind the scenes, and we've determined we are not covering everything. So we are going to have some great conversation, though, I can already tell. So we're going to start with, when you hear the word motherhood, what do you think of? What does that evoke in you?
Yeah, a lot there. A lot to unpack.
You know, I think I'll start.
Sure.
So I talk a lot about how motherhood, I think of the women in my life that have been a mother to me. Not necessarily, I mean, of course, my mom, but I have had many women in my life who have been a mother to me. And so, as someone who didn't actually want to be a mother, it was nice though, because I had so many women to look at and say, that's what being a mother is. That's what being a mother is. And I don't know, as moms, we kind of get the short end of the stick in some ways because there's so many expectations on us. There's so many things that we should do or could do, and then there's also a lot that we just don't know. And so some of it is looking at, for me, like the stuff that I know as a mom because it was what was taught to me. And then deciding, okay, this is what I want to be, and then trying to execute that with two humans that may not actually support that goal.
Yeah, sometimes the child or the subject is not.
Right. In theory, this sounds great. In truth, maybe not so much. Yeah. So that's what it I guess I would say is just a person who is trying really hard to love these two people and maybe some other people in their lives and just teach them something, help them grow. Yeah.
I think for me, what I think of when I think of motherhood is I've been blessed to be a mom myself to a biological human, my son, but also that motherhood finds its way into your life as a woman, I think, and it can, not always, but it can, sometimes when you least expect it. So it's that there doesn't have to be any biology. I mean, I know obviously when people adopt and whatnot, but even just in being a mom to another kiddo, even if they have a great mom or if they have, you're in that relationship of mothering. Because I was really, really blessed that my son had other moms that spoke into his life, because he sometimes would listen to them before he would listen to me, and that there's a camaraderie in that, even if you never have a biological child. I know several women who wanted kids, some didn't want kids, but they stepped up into that role, and it can look different for each woman as to what that means, but that I guess that biology doesn't matter when it comes to motherhood.
Yeah, I agree.
So on that note, for me, I think of Amanda used the word mothering, and I mother a lot of kids, and probably some adults too, whether they want it or not. So I think of it as, just caring about other people, looking out for them, modeling the way for them, and I think it does take a village for kids, and so I think most of my friends and family and even strangers have learned that I will mother your child, whether they think they need it or not, both positively and negatively, whether they're doing something that needs to be supported and valued and praised, or if they're not making good choices and somebody needs to tell them about it. No matter who you are, if you're a kid in my life, you will be mothered.
I love it. We need more people like that.
For me, it was a little bit of a different experience. It was kind of, you made the choice to be a mother. I was given a book from Dr. Spock.
Oh, that one, same book.
And here you go. You know,
And he's the expert at being a mother.
Yes.
right. I was like, okay. Yeah, not all that stuff works. But it was a learning experience. There's a lot of, for me personally, it was more, it was a little bit of an emotional bit of a roller coaster, I think, just trying to navigate through other people's actions versus my own. So I didn't really feel like I got to be a mom as much as I should have, even though I was the mom, I guess. I mean, I was there for my daughter the whole time, but at the same time, there's a lot of just negative energy around. So it was challenging at first, but then, you know, allowing who your family is to be your family, you know, to picking, choosing, that kind of thing. So try to make the best of every situation. So yeah.
I love that, Dawn, because I actually think, and I'm sorry I didn't mean to cut you off, Patty Lynn, I think that there's nothing more that makes you learn family isn't family, like what we talked about last month, than having kids. Because Mama Bear comes out.
Yeah, right? No, for real.
You're not putting up with that. You might have done it for yourself, but
Right.
then when you have kids, you're like, no.
Yeah, right.
It ain't happening.
Exactly. Yeah. So
I think for me, motherhood has been one of my greatest joys, and I had my first at 30. So, you know, I was ready to be a mom, and it is a big part of my identity. So, you know, I identify as wife and as sister and individual, but also mother is a huge role that I take very seriously, and I want to do my best at it, and I want to always you know, when you say do your best, like, oh, I did my best. But I did my best, and then I read books, and I asked advice, and I trialed and errored, and failed and succeeded. And, you know, so I didn't just show up and do my best with what I arrived with. You know, I really was always, and I've told my kids this, because they have some complaints about how I have done this, right? There have been some.
You mean Dr. Spock didn't teach you the ways to not make mistakes? He didn't know how to be a mother?
I didn't read the book.
Oh.
I read a lot of parenting books. I didn't read Spock. I knew the general. My mom had read Spock. He perseveres.
So they had comments, huh?
They did have comments about my mothering, and then I had to say, you know what, I did my best, but let me clarify, and I failed. And then I tried, you know, the thing with parenting is, if you fail, the children are going to give you another opportunity to try again. Right? It's not like a one and done. Like, oh, I did not correct that correctly. They're going to do the same thing. I get to try again. And, you know, we're going to redo this again, I guess, because that didn't work. But I really found so much joy, and I, you know, maybe being an older mom, but just enjoying the children and their growing up years, and just being a mom. Loved it. It had hard times, of course.
Well,
hence the complaints.
I love that you say, you know, that, you know, you make a mistake because, you know, you're going to make a mistake with child A. I only had one child, but we did mother and have mothered many other children. And it's the idea that you're like, oh, well, you're a different human. So
Right.
I've got to mother you differently because it's not working here, or it just doesn't serve, you know, and it's finding that, accepting, I guess, that not, you know, every circumstance. So when they, you know, you do get complaints, because I know, you know, I'm sure we complained a bit with my mom. It's like, well, my poor mom always tried to make everything fair, but it can't make life fair. Life is not fair, and you know, one kid gets to do something and you don't, maybe there's a reason.
Right.
Because
you
you
said I do that.
can't handle it or whatever it is.
So that it's not fair.
Yeah.
So what my husband always say, well, you're not old enough to know what fair is. Well, okay, maybe, but also it's not equal.
No.
But it is pretty fair. I'm like, you guys are looking for equal.
True,
Not
I
everything
guess
to
that's
be
a
equal,
good
but it's, you know, the way I maybe favor you one time and favor you one time, and it turns out pretty fair. It is pretty fair, it's just not always your way. I don't know. And then also, my sister said they're all going to need counseling.
Yep.
So we're going to do our
I
best,
agree.
and then they're going to need some help processing later. That how you were parented and how, you know.
And let's just say, every parent's done something bad, right? Every single parent, whether it's been directly to your children or someone else's or whatever.
Yeah, mistakes have been
Heck,
made.
I've done terrible things to other people's kids. Not terrible, but maybe.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, we've all done
In the
that.
moment,
There
we
will be
make
a
a decision.
hotline later if you've ever left your child with Mariah.
Yes, right? But I think we can also, in fairness, even as we're talking about this, I think we can all acknowledge we've done badly at something as a mom. Our moms have probably done something bad as a mom, grandmas, so forth, and our kids will probably do bad things as, you know, they become parents too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, as
so much grace.
and as mistakes are made, just to be humble, like, you know, hopefully the children have grace, but to be humble and to say I have done wrong or I acted foolishly or stupidly or angrily or whatever we have acted that we should not have, right? And in the moment that, you know, to apologize to your child and, you know, don't expect perfection here. I'm
Right.
figuring out, I'm the mom, but I'm still figuring out life.
Right. Yeah. I remember calling my mom and apologizing for what a terrible child I was. So, and then understanding because now I'm going through it. So yeah, grace. So much grace is needed. That's my
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that leads right into though the bad. We're gonna talk about the bad and the beautiful, but I really feel like let's just start with the bad because there's plenty we can talk about on that topic. Oh.
Well, is it my interpretation of the bad or my kids?
Yours.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
for me, mine are spread apart. So my oldest is 26 and my youngest is 15. And at the time, my daughter was 11 when I found out I was pregnant with my son. And it's always, you know, but I think there's a lot of bad things that I could say that I've done, but I think I just was in two different places in my world. I was 21 when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was 31 when I was pregnant with my son, but then the world changed, I changed, everything changed, and I'm again learning to be this mother role that I wasn't really, or didn't necessarily identify with. I mean, I identified with it, but I didn't always have the best role model, I guess. So, I think, and I don't even know if you know, Mariah, when I first met you, you had mentioned something, and you had told me, you know, just apologize. You know, you're not perfect. I called my daughter, and I told her, I said, you know, I've never claimed to say that I was the best parent or anything like that, but just know I did the best that I could with what I have, and you just, because things were a little rocky at one point, but I think it really kind of just taking that, accepting my responsibility. Not that I was doing anything bad, but just, you know, saying, hey, I did the best I can and continuing. I think our relationship has gotten better since that conversation. So,
Oh, I'm blessed by that. Thank you.
yeah. So,
Yeah, I actually last weekend got to do a lot of healing with some ladies around me, which is so crazy because it wasn't a retreat or anything, but we did so much healing. And something that really hit me from my motherhood story was that my daughter wasn't celebrated. So that was a really, from the womb, negativity and death was really spoken over her. This wasn't actually something I intended to share in this talk, but it really then goes, as I look at that moving forward, the fight to keep her, the words that were spoken over her, and seeing where she is today, both is a beautiful story in redemption, but also like it's given me a new place to look to, for my own faith, to pray for her, because it has brought a new understanding to my mind, both in her as a person and what she's going through today, having had that spoken over her from the womb, to where I was at as a mama, so young, both very stubborn, but also very, didn't know much, didn't want to hear, because negative had been spoken, then I didn't want to hear what anybody else had to say. You know, I just closed that wall that I needed. I needed that advice, but there were so many people in my life after that I didn't even want to hear, regardless of whether they were good or not. It didn't matter. I didn't want to hear anything else they had to say. So we did have to turn to books. We turned to freaking Dr. Spock. I know what book you're talking about. And I remember being on the phone with Alex at one particular moment and just being like, she is not doing what she's supposed to do. And he's like, well, the book says this. And I'm like, well, he's not here with her right now. And this is not working.
Right.
But just figuring that out, trying something different. And she is a stubborn girl, like her stubborn mom and stubborn dad. So why would we expect anything different? I don't know. But yeah, there were so many things at that beginning that I can't go back and wish differently, but I wish that we had had a little bit more mentorship and a little bit more, which we did get, but not enough, because those first couple of years were really rough. But there's no other way for it to have been done.
And I think that can be a really bad thing, not adequate mentorship. Not that I have birthed children, but you see patterns, you see cycles in families. And my own, I think, there was a lot of very young motherhood and not necessarily good modeling throughout, and that poses challenges. And it takes a lot to identify it, what good modeling versus not good modeling and mentorship is, I think. So I think that's probably I would imagine, one of the hardest things about motherhood is knowing and being able to identify if the examples you have are ones to follow, and then choosing to make different decisions.
Well, I see that too with you stepping in with family yourself. You've done that. And you've been a mother, like your nephew, you've been a mother to him. And you do.
Yeah, it helps. Yes, what I've seen, I would definitely need, as I mother other people's children, I definitely reflect back on the modeling I've had and what I should and shouldn't embrace. Yeah.
I see you as a mother for sure. Yeah, I definitely do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the bad is kind of that responsibility. I mean, you are helping form the future of another human. And for me, my mom definitely was breaking cycles. She did the best she could to break cycles, and had her own hiccups, and we've had our own back and forths where I really have kind of removed myself from the relationship and kind of been very guarded in I think being too close, because there was times that there was hurt, and part of it was we were physically not here near them, and then I think just it was good that we weren't. I think when I was raising my child as a young child. Then we moved back here when he was 10, and so it was kind of readapting to that. And just kind of realizing, I think, that you have a lot of weight with how your child sees the world. And granted, there's a lot of other aspects that go into a child's path or as they grow up. But there is so much gravity to the environment you're creating. And I definitely have some mom guilt because so I think it was about 2 or 3 years. I was about 3 years almost after we moved back here. So he was 12 and a half, 13. And I started working for a concert promoter. And that's when the habit of pleasing people all the time really just cranked up, because I became like a workaholic because I was trying to please this person and all these responsibilities and this and that. And I was also involved with the local theater company, so I had those people I was trying to please, and I was realizing that I was pleasing all these other people, not turning time and attention to my son. And I'm really, really blessed that my husband at the time, he had the ability to really be there, and they have a great relationship. But I'm dealing with it now that when my son texts my husband before he'll text me, there's times I'm like, ugh.
Yes.
But at the same time, there's still that relationship that, before my son moved out, like if I didn't get home, he's 22 and I'm an adult, and we're cohabitating, he's renting from us. But if I didn't come home, he'd be like, Mom, where are you with me? Or he'd be like, drive safe. Or, those types of things. And so it's just that immense responsibility of raising another human.
Yeah.
But again, going back to, my husband and I, my niece was born, my niece was born right around the time we were dating and about a year before we got engaged. So she's been very integral, and we've mothered her, especially because my sister and her really had a fracture of relationship. And so just the gravity of even that, of how much you can speak into another human. And I mean, she's now, in her late 20s and has her own big brood of children. So I don't know. I think the bad is just, it's not bad, it's just the weight of that gravity that you hold. The responsibility. It is a powerful responsibility.
And
You're like,
that's
I
what
don't
I
want it.
that's what I was thinking too, is that the bad is that I was responsible for these humans.
Yeah.
And I made all their decisions for them till a certain age. Now, schooling decisions,
Yeah.
maybe even early on, style and clothing decisions, where they're going to live,
Activities,
friend dates. Do I really want to drive to sports 7 times a week? So maybe, So you do have a huge influence. And then they get older and they get to start making those own choices. It's fun to see their interests grow and their independence come out. But I think that's where I'm trying to think of the complaints I give from my children. They're probably based on those,
Sure.
And so,
Well,
it was my responsibility. I made choices. I also chose what you're going to eat for dinner every night. I mean, there was so much.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing, is there's those times I think that get cemented into kids' brains.
Yes.
So before we started recording, I was telling a story about when I was trying to homeschool my child, and he was having an immense meltdown, and basically locked him in his room, because otherwise he would probably not be here today. Because I needed a timeout. But he, that's cemented into his brain as this big thing. But how many of those memories do we have as children that you kind of go, reality fiction? Some of them were very real experiences, but then going, oh, that's, even if it's not exactly how it happened, it's that responsibility that child now has, even if they're grown, they have that memory
of that experience, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry.
And I think that goes so well into what was it you were saying? Somebody said that your child's probably going to need counseling, and I think that's something that I even encourage moms with, because I'm like, it doesn't really matter how perfect you think you raise them.
Perfect.
Their perception of things is what's important in their mind, and I swear every kid needs therapy at some point, and quite frankly, there's nothing you can do about it, and you can do the best that you can do. That's what we all did. They're still going to have issues with how you raise them. They're going to have their complaints, their review.
Review.
But
Performance. Here's your performance
5
review as
stars.
a mother.
Right.
1 star.
No raise, no matter what.
And as Renee, as you were saying, that times changed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we're raising a different generation than us.
Yeah.
And so what we did, which was maybe status quo, then the next generation was going to say, well, we don't do that anymore. You know, we're like,
Yeah,
okay, but we, we're doing the best we can with
yeah,
what we got.
yeah.
We're learning and growing and changing and making new mistakes,
Right.
but we're on this good trajectory. It's just
Absolutely.
difficult.
Well, and I think your kids get different parents as you grow too, because they're not the
True.
only ones growing. So are you.
Which can be a complaint that you did this with the firstborn,
Right.
and then you did this with the lastborn, and I said, I'm allowed to change my mind, right? I'm allowed to change as a parent
Yeah.
and try something different. Just because I made a mistake here doesn't mean I'm going to make a mistake 5 years later with the
Right.
next.
Yeah.
Right.
And then when you have a gap,
Right.
which so many moms do now, they have the 2 and then they have the 2. You're a different parent.
I was going completely different places in my life in those time periods, and I'm now with one moved out, and then the youngest still living with me. I'm in a completely different place where I am now, and I'm continuing to grow. And I guess that is the beauty of it all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And let's just say too, there's different phases of kids too. Parenting toddlers is different than parenting teenagers, is different than parenting adults.
I don't know.
It's probably the same, but
It's got more vocabulary and a little bit bigger. I think
hashtags.
Not all kids are made the same. I think
Right,
we alluded to this, or somebody maybe specifically said it. They're what they need. There's fair, and then there's equal, and they're not necessarily the same thing. I remember my youngest sister telling me that my nephew was definitely my favorite because he doesn't get disciplined as much, or he doesn't whatever, that he needed different things. He didn't back talk, so there were different consequences for him. And so I think that's not every kid needs the same response or reaction or support.
yeah. I think it comes down to grace, right? We just need a lot of grace.
Well, and I think that goes into kind of actually, even though it's the bad, but it goes that there's a beauty in that too. That there
Yes.
it's not all the same.
Yeah.
Which is good because we're all different people.
Yeah. And so let's move right into that. Let's go into the beautiful about motherhood.
Watching them grow.
Watching them grow. You laugh so much when you have a toddler, right? Your days are full of, there's also frustrations, but the laughter of these little people that are figuring out the world, and it's very entertaining and fun, and then they get older, and the school years take on a new challenge, but they're growing and learning, and you see their interests come out and what they like, and then young adults. You get to be their friend, about the teen struggles, but then also, now in their 20s, my mom modeled very well going from mothering to I'm your friend, mentor friend, but still, a friend. And I'm just like, how did she do that? How did she trust us so much? I kind of want to meddle in what are they doing and where are they going and how. And I'm like, just trust them, let go, and let them fly from the nest. But just seeing and then becoming their friends, and they want to go shopping with you. Oh, they want to be with me. That's so fun that we can hang out and whatever. So I think it's just beautiful as they go from dependent children into your friends, family, and but friends.
I'm gonna tag on that because I will say, like, one memory I have that, you know, it's like, oh, this is amazing, is, and it seems so simple, but when there is that independence, that bridge, because I think healthy mothering relationships, you want the child to become independent. You want them to transition into the ability to function and be contributors to society, right? That's the whole point.
Right.
So I remember I get a text, or I don't know if it was a text or a call, I don't remember, and asking for where my sewing kit was, and I'm like, okay, it's here. And so I come home and my son is like sewing the button on his pants. Because we had spent the summer before, I was like, okay, here is how you do laundry. You know, he had kind of learned how, like, this is, now you're responsible for your laundry. You know, as you're looking at your laundry, if you find a button, you go, here's how you sew buttons. So I made him sew many buttons, and he's like, but come to find out, you know, darn a sock or stitch a little, you know, because, you know, these are things that don't unfortunately get taught anymore in school, for sure. And so it was just one of those, like, beautiful moments when you have something that you've imparted. And you're like, oh, they were listening.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yes.
So I think those are those beautiful moments when you get to see that reflection of what the fruits of your labor.
Yeah. I will say for me, the beautiful thing is seeing back. I love, you know, once we finally made it, like, you know, we got through the first years that were really rough, and oof. Once we decided, okay, we actually want to be fun parents, we want to, like, do the things that we want to do as a family, all of that. I think we really just enjoyed having our kids. We did everything with our kids. We took them everywhere. We were the parents, because we were so young, like at kids club, we'd go down the slide with them. We would have fun. We'd have this like train of kids that would be hanging out with us. And so once we finally got to that point, it was like, okay, yeah, we're just going to enjoy this. And so being able to look back and see, like, okay, that was really tough when they were younger, but now I see them as adults, and oh, that stubbornness is so great as an adult, because they know how to stick up for themselves, or they know how to do the things that they need to do. And, you know, that change that you have in between, you know, the younger elementary age to the teenage years, where you switch from being in charge of everything to now becoming an influencer more, maybe a little bit, not as much, was really rough. But it is that beautiful push-pull where you're like, okay, they're pushing me away, but they're also pulling me in, and I'm like,
Yes.
it's such a weird thing, but it's so beautiful, because now I see it and I'm like, wow. My kids aren't perfect. They've got a lot of things and a lot of issues, but at the same time, they're also considerate, kind, working adults that actually contribute to society. And like, wow, that's so cool. And like, you know, when we struggled during the teenage years of my daughter, I mean, I did say a couple times that I don't know if you're going to make it out of this alive. I know I am, but I'm not so sure if you are. And that struggle that we had. Yeah.
I've said it or thought it.
Right. But to now look back and, like, you know, we always kept relationship. We always tried to keep the, you know, conversation open and not be judgmental. We tried. We weren't perfect at it, but now she calls me all the time, just randomly. She'll just call, and I'm like, oh, my daughter loves calling me, and my son knows that he needs to, you know, call me at least every other week, and he knows it needs to be FaceTime because I need to see his face. Yeah. And he doesn't have a wife yet, so that probably helps too. But, you know, so they're just, I love as adults, like, seeing what amazing people they are, and like, wow, yeah, that's my kid.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I enjoy is seeing is the confidence in them that you instill in them, because a lot of times we're not necessarily molded that way ourselves, but you want to instill that in them to be able to have that.
Yeah.
And like you said, you still have your struggles and all of that, but it's even that with the struggles, you still see that, and so it is a beautiful thing.
story I'll share. It really has, it's everything you all have said. It's just a very specific story with my nephew. He was in a situation his senior year, and something happened, and his feelings were very valid, but his reaction was very inappropriate. So we're having some discussion about it. He was very like, nope. I'm like, well, I think you need to do this. Nope. I'm like, well, it's your choice. But, there's also consequences to how you choose to follow through with this. And so we had some back and forth discussions. And so he was told he needed to write a letter to apologize. And he was stuck on, I'm not going to apologize. And so we talked about how, an apology may or may not look, but he was no. I'm like, okay, your choice. So the next day he sends me a draft of his letter to review before he sent it off. And not only did he take my advice, but in this letter he's like, as I've learned from my aunt, and I'm like at work bawling out of pride, because not only did he hear me, but he's like telling this person, I heard my aunt.
So I love that. Yes, they really can
those
bless you big
moments.
time.
Yes.
It sneaks up on you. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
They hurt me.
And I'm prepared to read this letter that's like very defensive, because our talk the day before he was stuck on, I will not apologize. So.
Right.
I love it. Now, final question, and I think we've covered so much. Gosh, there's just so much with motherhood, just like womanhood. All the topics, really. But our final thought is, what do you wish someone had told you when you were a mom, like in the middle of it, whatever age that is? Because, of course, obviously that covers a large span of time. But what do you wish someone had told you?
I'll say you're not necessarily the mother that you came from. You can be your own individual and even though you may be influenced by a lot of those decisions that were embedded in you and how you were mothered, you have the opportunity to make those changes, to break those cycles, and be that mom.
I think breaking cycles is a whole other topic right there.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
We have like years now of topics.
I know, we're getting all this good stuff.
Conference or something, I don't know.
Right? Yeah.
I think,
Go ahead.
okay, I was gonna say, I'm gonna say that to just not sweat the small stuff.
Yes.
You find your way within that and what that looks like. Me being a perfectionist, that has to be this X, Y, Z. Don't sweat the small stuff. That kids, young people remember. They remember more like time spent with or specific actions where you stopped. They don't remember how clean the house was, how much you folded laundry, how perfect the party was, how much you spent on XYZ. Though that's not what typically is embedded. It's experiential, and so you just kind of can let some of that go.
Yes.
Not be Pinterest perfect. Thank goodness Pinterest wasn't around. I was trying to do all that. Just a lot of mom blogs. So I think that would be the biggest thing that especially in like a young mom.
I'll go right off of yours too, because it's kind of similar almost in the pick your battles kind of a thing. But I would say also love your child for who they are. Because we can tend to put our expectations, the world's expectations, and everything on them. And they find themselves in a place where they don't feel like they can be themselves, And so I think if anything that we've done well as a mom, and I don't think I'm a terrible mom, I don't, so please don't hear that, but there are certain choices that we made when our kids were growing up. And one of the biggest choices that we made, which I'm so thankful for, is that we really wanted to love them where they're at. We tried to not answer things until they asked the question. We tried to If they did come to us with a hard question, like, okay, where's this coming from? And how do I answer this with love and grace for my child so that they will know they can still come to us later on with difficult stuff. And now as my kids are going through difficult things and moving into their identity and maybe making some decisions that they're afraid of, they can come to us and they can tell us and know, oh, mom and dad are still going to love me.
Mm-hmm.
That has been so huge, especially these last couple of years. I just love them for who they are.
It's been said that the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so true, especially with parenting, that those days of parenting seem so long. So my advice is always just to enjoy that stage that they're in, because it's not going to last that long. And maybe not. Sometimes you're enjoying it, and sometimes you're enduring it. But time is passing, and there's so much is changing and growing. And just to be in that moment and to be with your child and enjoy the good parts, and it will change and grow.
That was good. Yeah. All right. Well, what I will ask is, do we have anything else that anyone wants to share for the good of the order, for making sure that we our hearts clear? Anything else that we wish to share?
Where's the sage?
Stay tuned.
Lots of extra topics coming your way.
That's good.
Yeah. That's good. All right. Well, ladies, oh my gosh, thank you so much for joining us again. And I gotta just say, as I listen to these stories and I hear them, one, I want to hear from you. I want you guys to comment, share your stories, any questions. I want you to know that you're not alone. And then I hope that you feel as blessed as I do when you're sitting here listening to what we're saying, and you can know that there are women who will come around you and who will support you, whatever stage of life you're in or you're going through. It is such a blessing to be surrounded by amazing ladies. So please join us again next month. We have some more great topics for you, and clearly every show we come up with more great topics. So if you see any that you're like, ooh, we need to talk about this, please let us know. And so until next time, we'll see you next month. Bye.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the alert.
Thank you.